Hello everybody, this is Christopher from Things and Stuff, and we're here in Los Alamitos Bay in the city of Long Beach, and we're going to be taking a little journey today on two things. The Aqualink system, which is a boat that takes you across the inner harbor of Long Beach on the way to various places like the Aquarium Pacific as well as the Queen Mary. Today we were actually, our final destination will be actually on the Queen Mary. So I'm looking forward to having you join us as we do some things and stuff. Okay everybody, this is Christopher from Things and Stuff, and we're about ready to get on the Aqualink. So let me turn the camera around and you can see exactly what I'm seeing. This is the best ride you can get to the Queen Mary and the Aquarium Pacific for only $5 per person. It's actually a really fun excursion for families to go on and just get a nice little break. You got the money? Just checking with my wife to make sure she has the money. So it's $5 to get on the Aqualink.
One way.
One way, correct. I am corrected on that. So if you were to do a round trip around, it would be exactly $20 for two people. Okay everybody, we're actually on the Aqualink right now. I'm going to walk around the boat a little bit. There may be a little wind here as I go on to the top side of the boat. Give you an idea of what the interior and the general experience is. Once again, we're taking the Aqualink from Los Alamitos Bay in Long Beach to the Queen Mary. Let's go take a walk and see the things and stuff that are in the Aqualink. So the Aqualink actually is very comfortable and very accommodating, and they actually have a little bar where you can get drinks and various different items while you're actually on the Aqualink. Once again, we may get a little wind in the video, so just be patient with that.
Oh, it's nice and breezy out here.
We're on our way.
Alrighty folks, good morning, welcome aboard. Real quick, my name is Cameron, and we do offer gout service here on the Aqualink, so if you guys need any refreshments, beer, wine, coffee, mixed drinks, that sort of thing, come to the galley.
The weather is beautiful here in Southern California right now. You couldn't ask for a better day to go on the water.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the best deals you could do, like I said, to go to the Queen Mary or the Aquarium Pacific in Southern California. It operates from Memorial Day weekend to Labor Day weekend every summer. And away we go, and we'll pick up our video in just a moment. Well, we're back inside, and I'm going to turn around the camera so you guys can see what we see out of it. It's so windy out there that I didn't think I'd be able to get any good quality audio, so just bear with me as we'll do some video from the inside cabin looking out towards Long Beach. accommodations on this vessel are very comfortable, and darn relaxing. It's not rough or tumbly. So for those of you with maybe queasy stomachs or things like that, you should be pretty well comfortable. Okay, we're just gonna walk around the boat. We'll go out to the back. Outside the water.
This is where you get all the squishes.
It's a beautiful day here in Southern California. Accessible. As you can plainly see, they actually have food available for purchase. Okay, with that, our next destination is the Queen Mary of Long Beach. So we'll see you as we do more things and stuff from the Aqualink to the Queen Mary. Okay everybody, this is Things and Stuff, and we're now approaching the Queen Mary, our final destination for the day, as we will be touring the grand old lady. She was built in 1936 and she's now celebrating her 90th birthday. So there are a lot of unique exhibits and things to do on the Queen Mary. So just enjoy the little journey as we get closer to the dock and disembark for a fun day here in Long Beach, California, doing the things and stuff that we enjoy together. The Queen Mary is famous for not only being the last transatlantic liner actually existing from the period of the 1930s. She's also known as the former Grey Ghost. She carried the largest amount of troops, Allied troops, across the Atlantic during World War II, and single-handedly shortened the war, they estimate, by 2 years. She arrived in Long Beach, California in the year 1967. Has been a popular tourist destination and hotel ever since. Okay, so we'll be arriving shortly on the Queen Mary, and we'll pick up from inside on aboard the Grand Lady, the Queen Mary. Okay, we have arrived at the Queen Mary in Long Beach. And I'm going to turn this camera around so you can see. Now one of the things you're going to notice right away, you're going to see a submarine in the water. This is the Scorpion submarine, and there's a little history about the submarine. It was brought back in roughly in the late 80s or 90s. I'm not quite sure the exact year. and it operated for many years as an attraction right next to the Queen Mary. In the last few years, I think it was the last 10 years or a little bit longer, I'm not sure exact time, you can always look it up and put it in the comments section. It was financially fell into bad, shall we say, ownership and defaulted, and it's in limbo right now. It's really quite a tragedy because she is a relic of the Cold War era. So you'll see that as they turn around, but when you also look, you're going to see the bow of the Queen Mary, the graceful lady of the seas. So let me slowly turn around here and let's take a look at the Queen Mary from the bow, as well as the Scorpion submarine. So in the last few years, the Queen Mary had a lot of rumors that it was in a bad predicament, that it was unseaworthy, possibly going to sink. These were just rumors. In fact, the new owners of the Queen Mary, which is the city of Long Beach now, and there's also conservation groups that are helping now, to bring the Queen Mary to the best condition she's been in the last 90 years. And one of the things that I love about this ship is that at the beginning of the fact that I'm such a love of the great liner eras, the Aquitania, the Normandy, all the ships. But the Queen Mary has, and her sister ship, the Queen Elizabeth, as I mentioned earlier, when we were crossing across, and hopefully the wind wasn't so bad, actually single-handedly shortened the length of World War II. She actually, between her and her sister ship, carried more Allied troops across the sea than has ever happened since then. So I'm going to pan around real quick because people always ask about the Scorpion. As you can see, the Scorpion is unfortunately in dire shape. They don't really know what they're going to do with it. If you have any ideas or have heard anything, any updated information, leave it in the comment section. Okay, so we're now approaching the Queen Mary. If you've been on the Queen Mary and you enjoy this video, please give it a like and subscribe. Thank you. And we'll catch you on the ship shortly. Hey everybody, this is Christopher back with you on Things and Stuff, and I'm here inside a really special place with a very special gentleman who will introduce himself by name and tell you a little bit of history about the room we are aboard the Queen Mary. So without further ado, I turn it around to you.
Hello, welcome aboard. I'm First Officer Paul Jasek. The room that we're standing in, I have several favorites. This is originally the first class drawing room. First class on board the Queen Mary was really quite special. Cunard believed in first class unsurpassed. First class passengers had 17 public rooms to spend their time in for the 4 days at sea, and 3 full decks, that olive promenade deck, the covered deck, sun deck where the lifeboats are, and sports deck. This room also had a dual purpose. Now we get a lot of commentary and a lot of interest in the paranormal and the metaphysical on board, but this ship was deeply spiritual. This ship offered 2 Catholic chapels, an Episcopal church service in the first class library, and the first ship in the world to offer a synagogue and a kosher kitchen to her passengers. Now we're undergoing a great renaissance on board, and I invite you to come see the good work we're doing. This ship hasn't looked this good in 30 years. We are currently restoring a lot of the artwork. Now we've just celebrated her 90th anniversary of the maiden voyage. This room on Sunday mornings was the Catholic chapel. And let me show you what we've brought up from the archives. Right this way. This glorious painting is the Madonna of the Atlantic. Kenneth Shoesmith is the artist. It is done with gold leaf. Now she's moved around the ship in the 58 years that she's been here, but Ambridge Hospitality, who's devoted to the conservation and the preservation of the ship, has returned her to her original spot. And we've just had her restored. Fascinating to watch the woman do the restoration with just a small brush and a Q-tip and go inch by inch and cleaning her up, and she gleams like a new planet. Kenneth Shoesmith also was responsible for the Madonna of the Tall Ships, which was in the second class Catholic chapel, and to the stern of this room is the flower market. It's a beautiful room. Actually, it's where ladies came to smoke. The gentlemen had their own smoking lounge further aft on the port side of Promenade Deck. But do come visit us and come see the marvelous work and find a little history, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Here we are again with another interesting story about the Queen Mary and the famous Poseidon movie.
This cast photo of the Poseidon Adventure, a very famous film, and was filmed on board the Queen Mary on our upper decks for the exterior, because it is a story about an ancient ocean liner, like the Queen Mary, named the Poseidon, who's making one last crossing before she goes to the breakers. This cast of characters is assembled for a publicity photograph, but if you're a fan and you look, there's a cast member missing. Do you know who it is? It's the young man that played her brother, Eric Shea. The story goes that Ronald Neave, who was the director, called for lunch. Now, there is a cardinal rule in show business, especially when you're doing a film: you never leave the set. That's why there's all of the food that's there, and you may have your own trailer, so you never leave the set. Well, Eric's mom went, "Oh, lunch? Let's go to Long Beach and get a burger." And they left. What they didn't know is they were doing all of the publicity photographs. Now, time is money in show business, so they did all the publicity photographs, and Eric doesn't appear in any of them. The dressing down that his mother got when she returned to the set, he nearly lost his job for that burger.
Okay, so that was really neat to just have that experience, and that very generous gentleman who gave us the tour. What a remarkable person who's been working on the Queen Mary for decades. What now we're doing is I'm continuing this tour. We're in the area of the ship called Piccadilly Circus. This was a very elegant area. This would be equivalent for, in layman's term, the area where those that could would go shopping aboard the Queen Mary. Of course, now a lot of the shops are been redone to have a theme. Like the room over here was originally the original bookstore, and then this is all where everybody go do all their shopping. And I'm just going to go around and let you take a look and just breathe it all in. So this is formerly the Austin Reed Regent Street clothing store, famous luxury brand clother. The Commodore's office is now the day room of our ship's captain and officers. Above the exterior windows is a frieze sculpted by Maurice Lambert entitled Sport and Speed. So as we walk around, you can actually see. So there's the Commodore. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Just a very elegant ship. And there is just so much to see and so much to do aboard the Queen Mary. A lot of the artifacts you see inside these glass cases have been recently brought back aboard the ship or from below ships, and artisans are either restoring them or cataloging them. Above ahead of us is the observation bar. It's an Art Deco lounge that's famous, and you can actually come there and have drinks and listen to music. And we'll go ahead and take a quick walk up this way. Recreation of one of the children's playrooms aboard the Queen Mary. And this is the observation bar. This lounge is where everybody would come to gather and listen to music and have drinks and cocktails, and people would dress up elegantly. You notice the unique wood above the ship. The Queen Mary is known as a ship of woods, many woods. Just a beautiful, beautiful ship. Here's one of the grand pianos. It served as a rehearsal room.
Do you?
Blow his horn, and he would echo through the apartments and the high rises.
All right, we'll continue our tour in just a little bit. Okay, so we're now down in the section of the ship that is some of the original passenger quarters and the cabins for guests that you can actually stay on the Queen Mary to this very day. And it's what they call a forever corridor because it just seems to go forever. But one of the things you'll notice, if you look very carefully, there's a bow in the floor. Well, the reason that is that so the ship and sea could flex. So as you walk the hallways of the actual Queen Mary, you will actually notice that. One of the questions that probably comes out, is the Queen Mary haunted? I believe it is. I've had some personal experiences on the ship. I have not seen anything, but there's just a presence. But it's also a benign presence. There's nothing here that I would feel is threatening or anything. And it could just be the sense of history. So, have you ever thought about staying on the Queen Mary? I have. I've yet to actually stay in a room on the Queen Mary, but someday I hope to have that happen. Now, one of the questions people ask is, are the rooms the original numbers that you see? Not really anymore. Because when the ship came in 1967, only the first class rooms have remained. So my understanding is the names of the rooms have actually changed. But you can actually see, if you look right here on this panel here, engraved is actually the numbers for each of the original rooms. And I'm not quite sure what these were exactly used for, so those of you who do recognize in the comments can let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. So one of the more elegant suites, which I can't go in right now, as my wife, you heard in the background talk. The suite is named after King George V, who was king at the time of the ship's launch and married to Queen Mary. Notable features include birchwood veneers, a slate-framed historic radiator, a custom writing desk, and stationary organizer, and inkwell in a large trunk room. So one of the privileges of this ship is that you can actually stay on it. Some people have made comments that it doesn't, it shows her age. Well, the ship is over 90 years old. But that's what makes her unique and special. Notice the beautiful woodwork. Now, you're going to see here, these railings here along the hallways. This is early form of plastic, and if I believe it's called backlight, if I remember correctly. So if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. But because the Queen Mary was known to be a swayer, that's what these were for. In fact, in one voyage she's famous for, she actually rolled more than 40 degrees, which she almost could have capsized, but she didn't. The Queen Mary was known to be a slight roller. And during World War II, a lot of people don't know that she was called the Gray Ghost because she was painted gray. In fact, Hitler had a high price for any U-boat submarine captain who could sink her. But she was so fast that it never happened. In front of us here is the original ticket bureau office. This would be where you would come if you wanted to go across on an excursion while she was in one of her many ports. So this was the Travel Bureau, and the original first class Travel Bureau was what it looked like back in the day. Alright, we'll continue on with the voyage. Okay, so now we're approaching the area. That's a store that leads into a lot of the legends, the hauntings of the Queen Mary. It's called Jackie's Spirit Shop. It's actually going down onto our deck. What also our deck was notorious for is during rolling seas, people would slip and fall, and there were a lot of injuries that happened on this deck. But now we have a shop down here called Jackie's Spirit Shop. Also, the Queen Mary does a haunt every Halloween, and so there's merchandise also in this location that you can purchase. It's a fun, whimsical, macabre store aboard the Queen Mary. So, according to legend, Jackie is the ghost of a young girl who drowned aboard the RMS Queen Mary during the mid-20th century. Sailing days know for some as Jacqueline Torrance, she was said to be around 5 years old at the time of her death. Over the years, visitors and crew have reported hearing unexplained splashes, echoes of laughter, and a young girl's voice calling out of the ship's now empty swimming pool. These mysterious occurrences have made Jackie one of the most well-known spirits. Despite no official record confirming a child's death or drowning aboard, Jackie's story has been passed on from generation to generation. I've been to the haunt here on the Queen Mary in the past, and it's quite a fun event.
Good to know. Don't stay on B deck. On B deck. Don't stay there? Okay. That's good to know. Thank you. Is that breeze right there?
There are various different signs and plaques telling several of the different ghost stories aboard the Queen Mary. And while highlighted in the earlier part of the video, mostly the historical context of the ship, the hauntings aboard the Queen Mary have been well documented over many decades. And I myself has actually personally experienced an experience back in the early 2000s myself. So if you're looking for that spooky vibe here aboard the Queen Mary, come to Jackie's shop. Okay, now we're at the front bow area of the ship, right up by the front, and you see the sign right in front of us is the captain's quarters of the Queen Mary. This used to be an off-limits area, except for the steward, who was actually the captain's steward who would serve the captain. So it's quite spacious in here, and of course there's cutouts to the rooms where they would be solid wall at the time. But this is actually the captain's steward's quarters. So the captain would actually have his own private steward who would actually bring food and drinks and coffee or whatever he need and reach out the needs of the captain or any distinguished guests we'd have. This is actually the steward's pantry where he would prepare foods. And then we'll continue walking on here. As I said before, this used to be an off-limits area of the ship when it was in service. So right in front of me is the captain's bedroom. Hopefully you can see through the glass. Notice all the intricate period furniture. Art Deco in design. The ship was built in 1934 and sailed in its first service in 1936, up until the year 1967. And here we actually have the captain's day room. Also in this room were very famous dignitaries of the time, including, if I recall correctly, Winston Churchill. This was the staff captain's quarters. He was in second command. This administrative officer was responsible for executing the orders of his captain, ensuring the smooth operation of all departments on the ship. You have a cut inlay here through the glass. You can actually see one of the original bathrooms. Notice the intricate tile work on the floor. One of the interesting things that was back in the day, you had hot water, cold water, and hot seawater and cold seawater. They used to believe that salt water, seawater, was therapeutic in nature back in the day. Here we have the red ensign, or red duster, is worn by British merchant ships as an identification of the registry. The blue ensign is worn to identify a British merchant ship whose captain is an officer in the Royal Naval Reserve. So these flags were hung during this period of service. You have various different wardrobe and slick coats and different clothing and jackets worn by the different officers of the ship. Looking out the doorway as we exit out, you get a nice view of the shoreline of Long Beach, California. Okay, continuing on our journey aboard the Queen Mary, we're in a section getting ready to go down the aft engine room. But before we do, I want to show you a little interesting tidbit. One of the ships that they mention here is the SS United States. The SS United States was designed by a gentleman by Francis Gibbs, and it was up until recently sitting outside of one of our ports here in the United States. There was a conservator ship that tried to keep it afloat for many, many decades, and unfortunately she's going to be sunk and turned into an artificial reef. She was the fastest American liner and the only liner to get the blue ribbon, which is, if you just study your history, is an award for the fastest transatlantic crossing. So as I go around, we're going to show a little bit of artifacts about the SS United States, and we can take a look at some of the merchandise, and then we're going to go down into the aft room. So we have some glassware and dishware from the SS United States. As I said, was the fastest ship ever built. She actually is the only ship that actually beat the Queen Mary in her later years. And her total speed was never fully discovered because she was also designed to be used as a troop ship in the 1950s. She's also the ship that was also mostly known for not having any wood except a piano and a cutlery board. She was later towed to Turkey for asbestos removal in the 1990s. I believe it was somewhere in the 1990s. Up until about 1978 or around that time period, she actually sat up with dehumidifiers to keep her in pristine condition. So all her belongings were eventually auctioned off, and as I said, her current state is now she's being ready to be turned into an artificial reef off the coast of the eastern United States. Okay, let's continue on and go down into the engine room, the aft engine room of the Queen Mary. remarkable sights here on the Queen Mary is that you can actually walk down into this actual engine room. She used high pressure steam, and she was turbine. When I was a small child, I used to be fascinated by the Queen Mary's engine room, and they would have docents, tour guides, that would tell you stories about how these engines operated under high pressure steam. Can you only imagine how loud and noisy it was back then compared to now? Her engines are silent and dormant since 1967. The craftsmanship and skill of this ship being built back in the mid-1930s. Unfortunately, by the time the 1960s came along, one of the tragedies of the great transatlantic liners is that the modern aircraft came along. And instead of taking days across the Atlantic from Europe to the United States, it became only a matter of hours. And this ended the great period of the great liners, except to this day, Cunard is the only operating ship line that still operates a true ocean liner. The Queen Mary II, named after this ship, which is the original Queen Mary. In front of us here, you can see the control panel, where various different crew members in here would actually control the functions of the aft steering room. So let's head on down to the labyrinth of the engine room as we speak. If you've been on the Queen Mary in the past and you'd like to leave a comment and tell your own personal experiences aboard the Queen Mary and why you find this ship fascinating as much as I do, please leave those comments. I love to hear about them. So inside here, you can actually see inside one of the works of the Queen Mary's turbine engines. High pressure steam would come through the Queen Mary and be compressed to make the propeller shaft go at high speeds, and then they would be reduced by reduction gear to generate the propeller's motion to take the ship out across the Great Sea. Now there is legends about the Queen Mary, about a crewman who, during watertight drills, was killed by jumping through just as the doors closed. And that is an actual fact. There was a real gentleman that did die down here.
Excuse me?
But is the ship really haunted? Well, that's up to speculation. Either you believe it or you don't. But what we do believe in is the Queen Mary is a gem from a bygone era. And here on Things and Stuff, it's been my pleasure to take you on a guided walkthrough and the various different things you've seen today between here and there as we do Things and Stuff aboard the Queen Mary. Here's the infamous door 13, which is famous reputedly to be haunted by the paranormal events. So the young crewman right here at this door tragically was killed while trying to play a game of jumping in between this door. He was killed instantly and crushed. And to this day, people have said they have seen his ghost. But is that true? Or is that just a made-up story? The death is real, but is the haunting real? And that will conclude our tour here aboard the Queen Mary and our journey on Things and Stuff the Aqualink and the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. Until our next video, may all your times be something that you do or things and stuff together. Well, just when you think it's over, things always seem to appear when you least expect them. An area of the Queen Mary exhibit I did not know there's a tribute to Winston Churchill during World War II. Since it's at the stern of the ship, so I'm going to take a little quick look, and then we finally are going to be concluded with this video. Winston Churchill traveled across the Atlantic to the United States with his full cabinet aboard the Queen Mary during the 1940s. And this is a recreation of the various different locations he stayed aboard the Queen Mary. A lot of these are original furnishings used by Winston Churchill when he was on the Queen Mary, as well as some of his cabinet room in England, in London. In fact, in September 1940, when Germany launched the Blitz, the intense bombing campaign focused on cities with London as a chief target. Churchill's staff met continuously in the secret underground cabinet room. Here they collected information, they argued with colleagues, and thrashed out their plans for every aspect of the war. The Blitz ended in 1941, and the war staff no longer needed to meet underground. Though in 1944, attacks by V-1 and V-2 long-range bombers missiles forced Churchill's staff underground once again. And here's one of the recreations of that very underground cabinet room. So we'll be concluding our journey through the Queen Mary, but I wanted to give you this little extra showing about World War II and what happened during the Blitz and Winston Churchill. So between Queen Mary and Winston Churchill and the bravery of the British people and the Allied forces, we enjoyed the freedoms that we take so for granted. And it's important to remember the sacrifices made by those many young men who sailed aboard the Queen Mary. So it's been my joy to take you aboard the Queen Mary today and the Aqualink. And I thank you for watching. Don't forget to give a like and subscribe.
And I have given warning to others.